Welcome back to That Doesn't Suck. Today I'm making a sourdough loaf, something I'm trying different. So this is a cream cheese blueberry lemon sourdough, and I'm not used to mixing a lot of stuff into my sourdough to begin with to make it. I've done it a few times for a bread loaf, but we're going to do this one different. So I'm adding egg and a little bit of granulated honey instead of sugar. It calls for sugar, but I'm going to do honey. Granulated honey. I like to work with that more. But so in order to, my typical recipe is 550 grams of hard white flour, and then 450 grams of water, and 115 grams of yeast, and then a couple teaspoons of salt. But to mix it up, I'm adding an egg, and then the teaspoon of sugar. So the egg, because I want to keep the liquids the same, I'm mixing up the egg and I'm going to add it to my bowl, and then I'm going to weigh out the water and add that to it, because I still want to keep it at 450 grams, because the sugar is not going to alter it much. And then this also calls for some lemon juice and some zest, but I'm going to add that much later in the recipe because I don't want it to retard the yeast, because I fear lemon juice could do that. So I'm going to bring this up. All right, there's 450 grams. So I'm going to add that. So first I'm going to add my flour, and then I'm going to add my salt. Then of course I left my sugar, the honey granules, and it looks like sugar. The honey granules, you can use it a 1-for-1 exchange because it doesn't add any moisture with sugar, although it does make things a little sweeter. And then I'll give this a little stir just to mix it all up. And then I'm going to add my 115 grams of sourdough starter, which I started last night, so that it would be ready, and mix it up with fresh flour, and got it going. All right, so we're going to add all of this, and I like to break the egg up before I mixed it all up, if you notice, just so that yolk and everything will incorporate a little easier, so you're not trying to break it up and get it all in. So I'm going to get this all mixed up and stir it a little bit. And then we're going to cover it and let it sit for an hour. And then I'll come back and start the stretch and folds. All right. You just want to make sure you get everything mixed in, and that the get my hand a little wet there. I just want to make sure there's nothing dry left in the bowl. All right. I'm going to do that because I don't see the need to. It's resting anyway, so all the moisture is everything's going to get hydrated, and then the yeast will actually start its work. So I think it all just works either way. If you want to do it and let it sit before you add the yeast or after, I really don't think it makes a huge difference, because I've done it both ways and just haven't seen much of a difference. All right, we're going to cover this and let it sit. All right, we're back. Going to do the stretch and fold. I'm curious to see how this turns out, because I've never done this with anything other than my 4 ingredients. So I'm curious to see how the texture of this is going to be. I don't think the eggs make a huge difference, but and I've been thinking about it, and I don't think I'm going to add. There, we'll let that sit now for a half hour. But I think I'm going to let it add, instead of doing adding the lemon juice and the lemon zest to the bread itself, 'cause by the time I get it, I haven't picked it up yet, I'm gonna be, it's I'm gonna be done with all my stretch and folds. So what I'm gonna do is just make a paste, blend it all together, and then smoothly put it over it like you're doing a cinnamon roll. And we'll see how that turns out. Because I think, you know, you get the flavor in, that's the main thing. You want it all in, and you want it to taste good. And I think either way it'll do it, because I don't really think I want chunks of cream cheese in there. So we'll see how that goes. I'll make it like an icing. And I'll probably even add a little more sugar just to get that in. All right, so we'll check back with you later. Number 2. All right, this is number 4, the last one. Seeing some air bubbles, the yeast is already doing its thing. All right, so now we're gonna let that sit and proof, and we'll be back. And we'll check on it several times during the day, but we'll be back when we're all proofed. All right, here we go. Well, we're having a few issues with the bread today. I'd left the house after I finished doing all my stretch and folds, and I figured I'd be back. And I figured it'd be fine. Well, I turned my proofing cycle on, and it was a little warmer than I thought, and I'd only meant to warm the oven up and then shut it off before I left, so it wouldn't get too cold. But now we see what an overproofed dough looks like. So now I'm gonna go with one of my other philosophies is, for working things, is it'll either work or it won't. So we're gonna go ahead, I'm gonna shape this now and add my mix-ins and put it into a banneton, and we're gonna see how this works out. Might not be too bad. It's pulling away from the bowl pretty well, so maybe I'm not in the worst, as bad a shape as I thought. Yeah, but it ain't good. All right. So, all right, I am mixing this up. So I've mixed up my my cream cheese, and I mixed it with lemon juice, and I mixed it with, it's a full 8 ounces of cream cheese, and then a full lemon, the juice of a lemon, and most of the zest of that same lemon. And then I added about, I'd meant to only add a teaspoon or a tablespoon of honeyed sugar, but after tasting it, I decided that wasn't enough because it was awful bitter, and your flavoring should taste good when they go in. So I ended up with like 3.5 tablespoons to cut the bitterness a bit. And so we'll see how that so it tastes pretty good, but it's not really, really sweet. So I don't want it to be a frosting. So we got our blueberries, and we're just gonna add some in. And I'm just doing it in the middle. And the reason I'm doing that is because I'm gonna fold it over on the sides. And if I fold it over on the sides, all that stuff's gonna fall in the middle anyway. So I'm gonna do this and fold it over. And because we're a little weird and wonky, I'm gonna use my scraper and get this folded over. And then I'm gonna add the rest of my filling on top. And I'm doing this because I want to be smooth in there. I want the flavor, but I don't really want the chunks of the cream cheese. All right, and then I'm gonna add some more blueberries on top. get a nice amount. All right, then I'm gonna roll it. And I'm not even gonna try to roll this around much to make the surface tension. I have my bannetons prepared. So I'm gonna put this in the round one. And I'm just slapping that bad boy in there. And we're gonna pinch it and try to cover some of it. And of course this will be the bottom. So we'll see how this looks after the night in the fridge, because I'm gonna leave it overnight and then cook it in the morning. So it's probably gonna end up with, you know, a minimum of 12 hours in the fridge. So we're gonna see how this works. Like I said, it'll either work or it won't. All right, we're back. We've got the blueberry cream cheese loaf out. We're gonna see how this does. I'm kind of hoping this isn't too bad. I already had 2 other doughs that I proofed and had the same issue with, because I was doing all this yesterday and decided to run errands and left everything too warm. Those came out bad. I'm hoping this dough didn't look as bad as that one did. So I'm hoping it cooks better. All right, we're gonna score that. And I did bake them in a cold pan in a hot oven on one of them. And the bottom wasn't as dark, so I kind of like that method. So I'm gonna try it again. Hopefully that creates a little steam, doesn't just wash it down. And we're in the oven for 30 minutes, and then I'll uncover it and we'll let it bake for, it takes about 50 minutes total, so we'll see where we are. All right, here we go. That's pretty flat. Looks a lot like the other ones, but this one darkened at least. That might be the sugar that was in it. We're gonna let this cool and slice into it. Hopefully it has some structure, but I'm not hopeful. Yeah, this has been a disappointing day. So we'll see where we end up. All right, it's take 2 on the lemon blueberry cream cheese loaf. I'm just trying to get this out. I was already using all my bannetons. I should probably buy more. So we're just gonna score this. And this dough looks a lot better because it was not overproofed. So I'll be much more careful in how I do that from now on. So I've got the pan preheated in the oven. And so we're gonna get this out. There we go, place that. I usually like to do about 4 ice cubes. Always make sure you remember which hand has the pot holder on. Back in the oven for a ½ hour, and then we'll take the lid off and we'll let that bake another, usually it takes about 20 minutes. So I'm usually 50 minutes in the oven. So we're gonna let that go. All right, we're back. I redid the dough and rebaked the loaf. And so this time I didn't overproof it, and I refilled it the exact same way I showed in the video. But you can see the difference. Now this one is a little closer grain. I probably could have let it proof a little longer. But this is the bad one, and this is the good one. You can see the difference in the two. And you can see it's got a nice swirl in it. The crust is good. This took longer to bake, with all that in there. But yeah, I think I would have proofed it a little longer. I did it last night. I was kind of probably gun shy after overproofing the first one. So, but it's got a good swirl. It's got a lot of blueberries. And it tastes phenomenal. The lemon and the cream cheese in there, and the I added a little sweetener to it, a little of the sugar, the granulated honey, and then the fresh blueberries. It does make a mess in your pan, so be prepared for that. So it did take me a little bit to get it all out, but that doesn't suck. Thanks for watching, and good luck baking, and enjoy.